Hi, everybody. I'm excited to talk about brand love and loyalty with this crew. I'll let everyone introduce themselves first. I'll start. Obviously, I'm Tiffany. I work with TGI Fridays, so no shade over here to my Chili's partners. We're in it together. We're in it together. I am excited to talk to this panel today about brand love. You have a very diverse background from all three of them. Why don't you start, Sheri, by introducing yourself?
I'm Sheri Czapla. I noticed you didn't attempt that CZ there when you introduced. Good choice. I'm with Bounteous. We are a digital transformation agency, and I'll tell you more about that at a break if you would like to hear more. I come from more years than I care to count in client service, and almost all of it is in direct marketing. So digital marketing now, but we work with a lot of loyalty programs, and we'll be talking more about that.
Hey, I'm Alia, Bedi. I am the general manager of Steve Harvey's Elevate You supplement brand. We just launched it on D2C in January of this year, and then into Walmart in June of this year. So, very exciting times for us.
Nick Pluim, I'm with Redbud Brands. It's a VC studio that incubates and accelerates brands. So we've got about 10 different companies that we're operating right now.
And I thought it would be fun before we start talking about the biz and brand love to ask this group of thought leaders what is a holiday ritual that they love and they're excited to recreate this year. And I'm doing this very much on the fly, so we'll see how everyone responds on their toes. But Sheri, a holiday ritual?
On my toes. My family, from the time I was a little bitty girl, has opened presents from youngest to oldest. My family's dwindled a little bit over the years, but that was always the thing, and I was the youngest for a very long time, so I always got to open first. And then when I had a nephew, he got to go first, and it was totally unfair. But that's something we still do to this day, and I look forward to it every Christmas.
That's a good idea. I might borrow that pride.
That's a great icebreaker question. So something I've been doing since I'm not from the Dallas area originally for the last few years is on Christmas Eve, me and my partner, we go and get hot cocoa somewhere in Uptown, and then we drive around the streets of Highland Park, just looking at all of the beautiful homes decorated with all the beautiful Christmas lights, and just really get into the holiday spirit.
I love that. Another option for my family. Okay, Nick?
Mine's actually pretty similar too.
Okay.
Just going around and seeing all the lights. So I've got like a list, and then I go through what's new and so like the Arboretum, and then drive around different neighborhoods and just love seeing all the lights.
My son and I went to the Arboretum. I think it was the day after Thanksgiving, and I was shocked because he had a laundry list of things he wanted to do, and I had one thing I got to do, and I chose the Arboretum. That was the one thing that he loved to do the most that week of all of our little outings, and he ended up spending 6 hours at the Arboretum. So if you haven't gone, you should definitely put it on your short list. But I asked that question because I thought it might be a nice segue for us talking about love and affinity and things that really draw passion from us individually, but also from our consumers. And so, Nick, I know you and I were talking a lot about authenticity being at the core of love. And so I'm curious to hear your background on, or your point of view on how has brand authenticity driven loyalty for you and your businesses in the past?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to brand authenticity, consumers are becoming more aware of what's real and what isn't real, and they start to look into it a little bit more. So for one of the brands that we have, it started out of Mexico, and we're continuing to focus on the Mexican consumer. And with that, we support the business down in Mexico as we expand it to the U.S. We work with Mexican agencies on the creative. When we go into innovation, we make sure it's flavors that appeal to Hispanics and not choose a flavor that's just popular to everyone. And at the core of it, if we can win the consumer that we're going after, and then the hope is that there's discovery by the mass market, will remain authentic to the brand. If we were just to follow a path and say, we want to get this retailer because they're the largest one out there, we're picking this flavor because it's trending right now, we would lose our core consumer and then we lose our authenticity. And I think at the end of the day, consumers love the brand because it speaks to them.
I love that. And I couldn't agree with you more truthfully. And I know, Alia, we were talking about authenticity from a celebrity endorsement perspective. And, you know, Steve Harvey has a very clear brand that he's cultivated over the years with his following. But what has been your experience with having his brand affinity transfer to a product? And how has that impacted your success or some of the challenges you've experienced?
Sure. So, to your point, obviously Steve Harvey has cultivated and curated his personal brand for many, many decades. And so, in launching his supplement brand, one of the things that was definitely top of mind for us is, from a brand safety perspective, protecting the supplement brand that we're going to be launching, but also making sure that everything that we launched, we were very aware that everything would be a reflection on his personal brand. So, and then speaking of loyalty, he has an incredibly loyal fan base. He's got the longest running radio show in the history of radio, 23 years, 9 million unique monthly listeners, and so, and he reaches 155 million households every year.
Is he still doing?
He still does Family Feud.
Okay.
He still hosts.
That's why I love him. Beyond Think Like a Man.
Yeah.
I love him for Family Feud.
Family Feud, as well as Celebrity Family Feud, and then he still has some hosting gigs, and then the radio show.
Okay.
So, so we were very, very aware of like his loyalty, his fan base, and so speaking about authenticity, we knew that anything that we put out, whether it was any sort of content, whether it was even emails, if we send emails to his team to review to make sure that they are matching his personal brand tone of voice, that from a loyalty perspective, to protect his supplement brands, loyalty and to drive that, but also his personal brand, I think every week we're iterating on just the smallest details of things to make sure that we are making it a very seamless and frictionless customer experience. So as an example, when you get your order, the order confirmation email or the order shipment email or any of that, we make sure that the customer service information is like, you know, right above the fold so you can see it. We keep moving that button. We keep moving, you know, where his signature is. We keep moving where his picture is. We want to make sure that from a customer perspective, we're building loyalty and making it very, very frictionless and seamless throughout the journey. But then whenever we say that we're going to do something, we make sure that we do it. Before we even came up with the assortment, the channel strategy, any of those things, we actually started building out the customer experience, the customer service part of things first, and said, okay, how do we want to make sure that we are servicing this brand? What is the turnaround time when it comes to customer complaints that we want to make sure that we adhere to? What are those KPIs first for this brand that make sure that ladder back up to his personal brand and reflect that?
I love that because you're thinking about managing the brand, but potentially not just from the brand marketer's perspective. You're thinking about how the consumer is engaging with your product, your brand experience through the entire experience. I love that. And I know, Sheri, you and I'm going to totally pivot. So you and I talked a lot about your best customer. And how do you think about strategically activating your best customer? Because you had a really cool saying, which I won't steal your thunder, but I will if you don't mention it. I'll share it with these folks. But how do you think about activating your best customer?
Well, I think I was even quoting someone when I gave you that quote. A CEO that I worked with a long time ago said, never underestimate your best customer's ability to spend more money with your brand.
You might have $5 more.
So it's true. They'll share shift, and just because you don't know about it doesn't mean they're not buying your product from someone else. So I think that was the quote you were looking for. I'm glad I remembered that. But yeah, I think more and more brands are coming to us now, and they're looking for ways to activate those best customers. A lot of our dining clients, and that's the vertical I work in at Bounteous, this is still a little new to a lot of them. The whole idea of the CDP and how to manage all of that data and how do you figure out what to do with it. So we help them do that. But one of the biggest opportunities is to find those top tier, most passionate people, and then you have to do something special. So is it VIP access? Is it Zoom with the chef or meet the designer? I mean, it depends on what your brand has to be authentic. Back to what Nick was saying, but that's one of the things we focus on a lot is trying to get that extra incremental purchase from your best customers.
I want to feel like I'm someone's best customer. Honestly, I do. Okay. I'm going to stay with you because I'm also curious. We were talking about the bottom line impact. impact of loyalty and the bottom line impact of brand affinity. And so how have you been able to transfer brand affinity into meaningful bottom line impacts in your past and really demonstrate the impact of that to your business holders?
Sure. Well, I think that's the reason loyalty programs were born, right? It was kind of how do you, make this, your brand passion pay off for the consumer in some way. One of my brands, and I'm sorry to my Southwest friend, but one of my brands is American, and I'm very, loyal to them to the point of like constrained by them, maybe you could even say. But they absolutely influence my behavior. I use a credit card so I get more miles. I haven't done the mile running thing, but I have been tempted.
Wait, what's the running thing?
Oh, do you not know this?
No.
So
Maybe there's one person here that doesn't, so let's humor that one
If you're
person.
close to like your next tier or your
Yeah.
next reward, if you take that one extra trip only for the miles.
I've heard about
Yeah.
people doing
People
this
do.
craziness. I've heard, there's a story I heard about, no, literally, they were on an international flight to Italy, and they were in first class, and the person next to them said that they only took that trip. They were going to Italy and turning back so they can get bumped up into their extra. I could not believe it. But so, that's a thing.
That is brand affinity showing up on the bottom
That is
line.
love.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, we all know that American, a lot of the travel companies were at the forefront of this, the loyalty, beginnings. And those are big, complicated systems, right? They're like the commerce behind all of that is a lot. The partnerships, all of that. And not every brand needs that. And that's something that I think we've really tapped into with some of our smaller brands, some of the restaurant brands. One that I'll talk about specifically, one of our clients is Cheesecake Factory. They didn't want the points program. They didn't, that just wasn't their vision for what their customer needed or wanted. But one of the insights they had is that people didn't like to wait in line. And I don't know about you, last time you went to Cheesecake Factory, my boys, I've changed boys, and that's like birthday central. That's what we go to every birthday. And because of the lines, sometimes it would only be on birthdays when we go stand in line. Now, if you want to make a reservation, all you have to do is join the loyalty program.
So they've got a Disney Fast Pass
It's
program.
cheap.
I love it.
It's
I'm borrowing
cheap.
that with pride. I'm
And
making notes.
that's another way that it absolutely translates to the bottom line, because now I'm willing to
You're
take
more
my
frequent.
boys
Yeah, you're
more
willing to go.
often because I can pop in and make a reservation.
I love that example. I love that. I've got my marketing playbook right now, already figured out. So Nick, I know that a lot of your brands have an in-store component. And so we talked a lot about retail strategy and, I'm specifically curious if you can talk to the team about, what strategies have you taken in the past with your retailers and your distributors, because you go through distributors, to build customer brand relationships and how that customer brand affinity impacts your business.
Yeah, so I think we've got the consumers as the end user, so a lot of people think of them as your customer, but when you're in a 3-tier system or you're working with retailers as a supplier, then you think of them as your customer, and you want to get their loyalty from the brand. The base of it all, I think it starts with customer service. It's like, hopefully everyone's had a customer service job in their life or a sales job to know what that really means, where you deliver on the promise you make to them. But it's also knowing what they look for when you're working with them and building that trust. So a lot of times I start with them and get an understanding of like, what do they want, where are they missing out in their stores, like, what's the opportunity they need. Like maybe it's they need basket size increase at the store. So how can we help them with that? Can we partner brands together to help them there? They need excitement to drive traffic. Can we find an influencer? Can we do a digital campaign to bring new people into their store? Because maybe we're doing a limited time offer just with them. But how do we get people to know we're doing that with them? And then it's understanding with them, like being a good partner. When's the best time to communicate? How do you like communication? And then knowing that we can deliver on those promises. And a lot of it comes down to, do we have the money to deliver on that promise with them? Like, if they're going to make an order, do we have enough money to fulfill that order? Can we get it there on time? Your category buyer, in a lot of cases, once they authorize you to be in their store, they're basically going to their boss and telling them, I want to bring this brand in. If you fail, they fail. So it's a partnership there. So whatever you can do to build that trust with them, then ultimately that reflects to the end consumer. If you build that trust with your retailers and your distributors and you know stuff's going to get there on time, then you can run any promotion you want knowing that the products will be there for the consumer to buy. If you fail in those areas, you could run a program, get people into the store, and then you're sold out of product.
I'm nodding my head. I had a conversation with someone on my team earlier today, and it was a conversation out of love, but I had to tell them, do not have me looking stupid out here in these streets. I need you to show up so that we can show out, okay? So it's all about relationship building, whether it's your consumer or your customer. I love that. So, Alia, one of the things that you and I were talking about on the same vein of, the retail experience is subscriptions. And so I really am curious to hear your thoughts on, what are subscription-based loyalty programs and that are offering things like a subscribe and save. How are those benefiting, building, or not benefiting building relationships?
Great question. So, I think the subscription model is like the ultimate when it comes to your signing up for loyalty, and your loyalty better be outstanding if you're going to keep asking for that customer to spend that money with you every single month. So I'm definitely a big fan of subscription, managing a D2C, primarily D2C brand and business. However, I think the piece that is really important to consider when it comes to subscription is to make sure that you are offering the consumer flexibility when it comes to that offering. So don't lock them into a subscription. Don't kind of scam them into a subscription so that they don't know that they're going into a subscription. Make it very clear on your site that they are signing up for a subscription. Make sure that in that first order shipment email, you are giving them the option to pause that subscription. And I know that may be a little bit controversial because that might go against the grain in terms of building AOV and building LTV and all of those different things. But if you do the math long term about what it's going to cost you if you lose that customer, just because you didn't give them that flexibility and that they are never going to come back because of that.
It's cheaper to keep her.
It's cheaper, yeah. And then I wanted to just piggyback on something that Sheri had said. So one of the things that we're also doing that's different, similar to Cheesecake Factory, I would say, but in the vein of Steve Harvey's personal brand is, yes, we have a loyalty program, we do all the things that kind of sort of checks the boxes, but what we really want to target and what we know that is most important to our consumer is hearing from Harvey himself. And so you can't put a price on that. So we've banked a ton of content that we send out to our customers where they just want to get a laugh from Steve Harvey, and that's kind of the incentive to sign up for our loyalty program. Or they want to get a piece of advice about, how to get through that tough time, how to, they want to hear about how Harvey overcame homelessness. And so we created all of that and curated all of that content so that that's kind of our currency when it comes to loyalty, less so rewards.
I love that. Steve Harvey is also from Cleveland, Ohio, is that right? Or he's from Ohio.
He is from Ohio.
I say that because I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. So I have a deep relationship. Hey, Cleveland, the crowd. Okay, Sheri. So, speaking of personalization, there's that transition. How do you think personalization can strengthen brand relationships and provide incremental benefit for consumers?
I think it's interesting. It's obviously data privacy is a huge topic. We heard a lot about that earlier. But I think people are willing to tell you a lot about themselves if you respect what you do with the data and if you use it. So I don't know if you remember the days when you fill out these long customer profiles when you were joining your program. It'd be like, what's your favorite color? So why do you care? What are you going to do with that information? So I'm exaggerating. I don't know if anybody ever really asked that question, but they seemed kind of far-fetched. So I think the personalization piece is, you take the data they give you and use it to help the customer. So one of my favorite examples, one of my favorite brands is Sephora. And dang it, they know exactly when I'm going to run out of something. And I get a note that says, Sheri, you can't run out of your favorite concealer. And I'm like, oh, you're right, I can't. And so, and so I buy that, and usually with a list of other things I've had on my wish list. Because while I'm get a paper shipping,
I've already showed up
right?
for the purchase transactions. I may as well just add the blush.
Right? So you're a Sephora girl too.
I am.
Yeah, I can tell. So that's the kind of information that you can take and use and leverage it to help the customer, where they don't feel like you're invading their privacy. They feel like you're actually using what they know about you to make your life better.
Because you reminded me I needed blush, and now I don't have to come back next week and try to get to $50 to get my free shipping because I'm that customer.
That's right. And you know my colors, and you know all of the things that's all saved in my profile. That's important information to save. One of the things we've done with our restaurant clients is a lot of them we do. It's a simple thing generally. My tech people would love that comment, but generally. It's you save your favorites. So I don't know about you guys, but family of four, if we go to fast food place, typically we're getting the same thing every time, right? And I don't have to remember. Just my oldest one doesn't want onions, and my youngest one only wants plain and dry. Once I've built that order and I've favorited it in the app, then I can just go back and say, give me that that favorite order. And that's another way just to use data that I've already shared or given you through my transactions, and to make it easier for the customer as well.
It's one less thing for me to have to think about as a consumer, that my son doesn't like pickles.
There you go.
Okay, all right. So Nick, one of the things that I really geeked out on when you and I were having a conversation was field marketing. I spent very early in my career a lot of time working in field marketing, and we were talking about, how you can leverage field marketing strategies to support loyalty in particular. And my question for you is, what are the building blocks for a successful field marketing loyalty program, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I think with the loyalty, field marketing's that face-to-face connection with the brand, and a lot of times it does start with the brand ambassador, and that could be a part-time employee. Sometimes they're through an agency, so it becomes a hiring practice that's the most important there. I do use agencies for field marketing. You have to. Some retailers require it. It's not always the easiest because then you get 1 or 2 pages to educate them on the brand and hope they believe in it, and they're representing a lot of brands. But when you do have the opportunity to start hiring your own people internally, even if they're part-time, then you get to really work with them and find the right people who believe. And they'll create loyalty for the brand through their interactions with customers at the store, in the field, at events, as long as they really believe in what the brand is doing and they also believe they're making an impact for the brand. They'll sell it like they're the owner of the brand, and they'll talk to people about it, or people will ask them, did you start this? Even if they seem way too young to be the person who started the company, they'll ask them that because they believe in it. And a lot of times what you'll get from the founders of brands when you start launching these programs, they'll say, I did a demo here, or I was at this event and I sold this many units. Why is it so much lower in the field? And a lot of times that breaks down to the fact that the people that are selling it are the advocates in the street. They don't have the same loyalty to the brand, but when they do, they can sell just as much as the owner. It takes time to grow that, but that's the benefit of field marketing when it works well, is that they're going to sell it because they're going to act as owners, but you have to make them feel empowered. And then as they grow in the organization, those people will come out that you'll notice they did a really good job with the brand. They were very passionate about it. And then it becomes, how do I empower them to make more decisions for the brand, for the next strategy of the brand? Even if that's not what we're going to do, they can be heard for the brand. And then the customers, at the end of the day, that end consumer, they feel like they met someone very important to the brand, and they feel they're a part of that brand now too. Like by making that purchase of this product, they're changing the world. They're doing something better because they understand the mission too.
A brand ambassador who could sell product as good as the founder. That's a thread I would welcome any day, right? So I love that we've been having a conversation about building customer relationships through brand loyalty, and a lot of what has resonated with me is the clear requirement for there to be a back and forth. We've been having a back and forth conversation. We've been talking about the consumer and the brand having a back and forth relationship. And so I would love to use this as an opportunity for us to have a back and forth conversation with our audience, I'll call it. So are there any questions for anyone on the panel about how to build brand relationships and to drive loyalty? Yes.
Is anybody doing anything with NFT?
Are you guys doing anything? I'm not currently. I've dabbled in that in my past. The juice wasn't worth the squeeze. That was my experience. It's my experience was it was extremely niche. It was it resonated with that audience, but it was like talking to 2 people amongst thousands. And so it was a lot of work for little outcome. So that's my personal experience. Anybody else in this room had experience with NFTs?
Well, they were hot for a while.
They were hot for a
So
while.
it was something, if you didn't jump on it right away, it wasn't worth the squeeze like you're saying. But, who knows, maybe like QR codes, it'll be back. Because all of a
That's
sudden,
right.
COVID came and QR codes became relevant, and they were irrelevant for the longest time.
Which I never understood why they became irrelevant. It's so useful.
Well, mainly because it hadn't evolved to the point where people found it necessary, mainly because they were used the same way NFTs
Yeah,
were used in the beginning, where it was a novelty
yeah,
instead of something entrenched in what we do every day.
right. Wasn't a behavior.
Special app to be able to read it.
Oh, you're right.
And now you can.
Right.
Take a
Yeah.
picture.
Yeah.
But that
Friction.
arrived early, people just weren't ready to do it.
I love that. Okay. Thank you for the question. Yes, yes.
Hi, I'm in the back here. So how do you, I'm sure every brand is different, but sort of what metrics do you put in place to understand this person is now loyal, but now they love the brand? What is that leap, right? Because I'm loyal to American Airlines, but I don't love them enough to just fly to Italy and turn around and come back.
To never shop anywhere else.
Yeah.
That's a good question. What about our panel? Any feedback on that?
I do have some feedback on that. I think that's when you're looking at your top tier and you want your elite tier. And I think that's when our data platforms and data warehouses and all that, our analytics people really come into play. And they come in and they watch for things that, and I wish I had that kind of vision to like the beautiful mind and kind of see where the data, takes us. But what we learn from our analytics people every day is that sometimes there are like hints at that kind of thing, that if you just put the right, whether it's an offer or a badge or whatever, to put that in front of them, then they'll take that next step and become part of your, whatever, is it 1%, is it 5%, whatever, determined is. I think it's different, it is different for every brand, though, right? Like what makes your brand like the super loyal is gonna be very different from maybe a retailer, right?
My experience is that super brand loyal consumer, the people who are coming more frequently than my average consumer, that are spending more than my average consumer. I'm not typically only monitoring those everyday metrics, to your question, but I'm doing a biannual brand health tracker, and I'm talking to them, and I have to chart. That's the thing. I can't expect you to go on one date with me and all of a sudden you're falling over yourself and in love with me. It's like I have to talk to you a lot, and I have to nurture that relationship, and I have to show up again and again and again. And so continuously monitoring that relationship through like a brand health tracker, and specifically in my past I've leveraged if there's key attributes that I want my loyal consumer. I want Sheri to reiterate, Tiffany is amazing at cooking. And so I just need to constantly talk to Sheri about, I just got this new cookbook. And then the next time it's, I just tried this new recipe and let me show you this thing on Pinterest. And so it's putting seeds of belief in Sheri's mind that I'm the best cook, and then continuing to ask her, who's the best cook in your life? Who's the best cook in your life? Yeah, so it's a little manipulative, but it's worked in my past. But so to answer your question, continuous brand health trackers and specifically monitoring key attributes that I strategically am activating with that loyal consumer every interaction possible. Any other questions? Or I'm going to get to your question, but any other responses from the panel?
Yeah, it's not like the best metric, but whenever someone leaves a really positive review for you on a website, because people are more likely to like complain than they are to get recognition. And when you've got a brand that has subscription services and you go through an Amazon, you look like Amazon reviews are so important for an early stage brand. When it says Vine next to it, that means the person got it for free and they're basically a professional reviewer and they review stuff. That's nice to have. It means they review a lot of things. But when you have someone that doesn't have that and it just says the verified buyer badge, and then you look at them, you notice like this person's on subscription, they've been buying for this long, and you read the words they use, they really love the brand at that point. And from when I go to retailers with those comments, I'll put those in the deck and show people, this is what people are saying online. It's a verified purchase. We have no connection to this person. They just love to talk about our brand. And maybe you'll find them speaking across on social media too, and the digital team will say, this person likes everything we do. They share the repost. it's not the best metric, but if they're sharing, reposting, they're leaving comments for you, that's pretty positive.
And I agree with you, because essentially your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. I could think I'm a good cook, but Sheri says her tater tots are trash. I don't know. Okay, there was a question over here. Go ahead.
Yeah, you just mentioned Nick, like reviews. This question is for anybody that's more of a direct channel, you go to a website or a product and you're directly receiving reviews. What about unsolicited feedback happening on X, on Instagram, where your brands aren't tagged? What role does that play in understanding brand love, brand loyalty?
See, Alia.
Yeah, I can take that. The Elevate You brand launched in January, and I think by February, we were getting unsolicited contacts on all Meta platforms from people that had been testimonial users of the product for about 30 days, saying, this product has changed our life. This is the first greens powder that is affordable. We've always wanted to try greens powders, but the only brand out there has been, really for the 1% at $100 a month subscription. Ours is $49. And so we want to be able to spread Steve Harvey's word. How can we help? And we hadn't even thought about this until we started getting that feedback. We created a private Facebook group for those people. And then they said, well, you know what? We really need the message here about this product is that you have to stay on it. Like, if you stay on it for 28 days, it actually works. And so we thought, well, why don't we create like a 28-day challenge? And so we did. All of that came out of unsolicited reviews from our social platforms. And so we still nurture that Facebook group. It's grown exponentially since then. But that's something you can't necessarily put a dollar value to. But we would never have come up with a 28-day challenge, without that. We would never have been able to. Now we use that group for innovation ideas, for, gut checking pack copy. All the things that you can't necessarily assign a dollar value to, but in the longer term, it's adding such incremental value to the longer term brand equity of the brand.
We do something similar. One of our brands is in hormone replacement therapy. We launched one recently for women, and the conversation when they're talking to us online, we started a Facebook group. And it became more of their community than ours, so they could talk about whatever they want in that group, whether it was our brand or not. It's a good place for us to learn what's going on, what issues they're facing. But at the end of the day, these were all fans of the brand who want to get together and they love talking with each other. Discourse is another platform you can use. It just happened to be Facebook was our core audience because you have to be 40 or older, and that's where they're going right now. But I've heard of brands that are smaller that use Discord groups. Some use Reddit channels, like subcategories there if they want to speak. And that's a good way, like you get the audience together and you learn from them. And that can help with your innovation, your marketing, just learning what people are saying to you unsolicited.
I'm nodding my head. I do all of those things, and I encourage them all. Yeah, we have one question. Why don't you go while you're standing?
Do you have any thoughts on cost marketing, on how you build customer relationships with your brands? And then we just want to know how you manage to insulate your brand. And when a Harvey could be in the news every day, do you get a red trigger? Okay, we're going silent now, whatever.
So specifically for me, okay. So Steve and Marjorie Harvey already have their own foundation. So which they've had for many, many years. So we tapped into that. So we sponsor events through that. One of the things that was important to us, given the target of our brand is primarily women 40 plus, he holds a single mother summit every year. So we just expanded on that. We took that kind of concept and are being able to tie the brand to it to our retail partners. To see if they wanted to be a part of it as well. So that's that's our biggest kind of avenue since he had the existing foundation to be able to really just tack on and expand the impact that it has.
Several of our restaurant brands donate to No Kid Hungry. That's one of it makes a lot of sense, right? And so a lot of our brands in our websites and apps, we've added a like roundup for No Kid Hungry. Or in the case of Wingstop, we do just round up for their own charity program. The difference that has made for all of them, and for those obviously for the charities, is enormous. And I shouldn't say everybody does it, but everybody does it. Like what's a few cents here and there, But once you're going across, hundreds of thousands of orders, it really adds up. So that's a huge cause-related marketing that we obviously support.
Yeah, for one of our brands, it's called Operation Good Boy. It's a veteran-founded and operated brand in the pet space. And that's one of the first questions we get anytime we meet with a retailer. They ask, what are you doing? I think in the pet space in general, people are always asking, what are you doing? Because they want you to give back to some organization, but then also having the military component to it. They're thinking that we need to do something for the military as well, and we do. We haven't made it the front of the brand yet, and that's going to be the goal once we can start write even larger checks. We have written checks already, and it's focused on the military working dog. And that's those dogs that were deployed that came back that can be rehabilitated to civilian life just like soldiers can. But we picked a very targeted group that we can work with for that messaging in a space that has everyone doing some sort of cause marketing.
Okay. Was there another question in that same row? Sir, did you have a question?
Yeah, sure. So I love what you mentioned about being where a consumer is. You mentioned Reddit, and there are lots of great places where a consumer is that some marketers might not think is the most brand safe, and they're kind of concerned. How do you weigh brand safety with being where your consumers are and being able to integrate the message into that?
Could you repeat that again, just so I'm clear on the question?
So the question is, are there places that your consumer is that you're a little hesitant to put your brand?
I was just having this conversation with Brian Crabtree on Twitter.
Twitter, Reddit, any social platform like that.
When we talk about asking for any privacy information, we're just giving the resources that are out there. I will say for brands that may have more privacy concerns with them, or they may be a medical brand, you're dealing with supplements, just you gotta stick to the script on those ones and not get far off it. It opens you up to some challenges if you do, but giving people the information is what's the most important part of that. And finding the customers is always a challenge. I'll say, like, especially when you get into space, is the customer older or they don't attend certain things. So as we think about where we attract customers at, we go out to events to look for customers, we go online. But brands where those customers may not be, maybe it's a brand that skews a little bit more traditionally older in age demographics. I'm always looking for where they're at, and a lot of times that's the communication to, if you know someone in this space, because they're hard to track down, give them this information and share it with them.
And I can give an example from my past. So I did use Reddit, and I used it in two different ways. One, I used it as a consumer insights dumpster dive. I don't know any other nicer way to say that, but that's exactly what it was. And it was to try to understand, well, why do the haters hate? And what do they love that I might be able to throw a little bit of gasoline on to get them off of hating me on this one subject. And it is a fruitful exercise, I think, from an insights and intake perspective. On the other hand, I have used Reddit from a paid media perspective, and it's actually a pretty cool channel because you can target sub threads or subreddit channels, or you can just say all food and bev. So then you're spreading out the potential of your advertising being placed alongside some hateful subreddit, and you can do exclusionary things in that regard as well. But for me, I've used it as a learn, so I'm not talking to my own navel. I just need to hear what do people want and what do they hate. So, good question. Any other questions? Yes, Yeah, her question was, are we using a tool to aggregate all of the sources? So are you talking like a tool to aggregate what I would just refer to as social sentiment and so I'm going to let them answer and then I'll give you mine. Do you guys have a tool that you're leveraging?
Not aggregating social sentiment. We use Czapla, one of the more better known platforms from a reviews standpoint. It's aggregating our social conversation, not at this time, not yet.
I wish I knew the name of our our social tools. Yes, we have them. And if I will get your card or your LinkedIn and send you the answer afterwards, because I do know that we monitor social sentiment for a lot of our clients. I'm just not familiar enough with the tools to answer you directly.
Yeah, I'm not sure what tool we use. We have a growth marketing team that runs that, so they would actually know the software they've been using.
And so I'll answer, and then anyone in the room who has a different option, please speak up so we can help each other. So the tool or partner that we use is an agency called Gather Media. And they're actually able to source conversations that are happening across various platforms, whether it's in a Reddit thread or it's a review on social, or I shouldn't say social, a review on Google or a review on Yelp. So they're our partner that helps us monitor social sentiment, and we're actually able to click into an individual thread. So if it's, hey, why are we 60% neutral this month and we were 40% neutral last month, we can go into, okay, these are the top 3 conversations online that are driving engagement that's resulted in neutrality. Does anyone have any other recommendations for tools or partners that help aggregate social conversation sentiment? Why no? Yes.
Well, just to add on from my agency, so our company is called BMW Digital.
Thank you.
And that's
for
one thing that we
speaking up on
actually
your
measure.
behalf.
Yeah, we measure for our partners because, to your point, there's no point us doing a campaign or a strategy if we don't know the results. And so for us, the results lies back to how successful do we help the narrative around your organization? How much are we able to shift that needle? Because now that you know it's a good time, now let's double down on that marketing effort. So like, why hasn't this marketing effort been doing so well for us? Great plan, great strategy, but it's not falling right. Well, are we looking at what are people saying about you, and then lean into that with the campaign that you've already developed? So I am on LinkedIn at Neandre Broussard.
What's your first name again, young man?
Neandre.
Neon. Everyone speak to Neon. I love you speaking on your behalf. Thank you. Thank you. Neon, everyone. Okay. Anyone else? Why no? Well, this has been lovely. I really have enjoyed this time. It's been a conversation amongst friends. Thank you so much for inviting us, and please network with us.